Namaste and greetings. I, Samprikta Banerjee, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान नई Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Learning. Today, we are gathered here for day 4 of UPLGYF, Urban Policy and Local Governance Youth Fellowship, an online national autumn and winter school program, a 4-month online immersive introductory leadership certificate training fellowship program organized by IMPRI Center for Habitat, Urban and Regional Studies, CHURS, IMPRI Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi. The chair for the program is Professor Manjula Bharathy ji, Professor, Center for Urban Policy and Governance, School of Habitat Studies, and Professor at Tata Institute of Social Sciences, TIS, Mumbai, visiting Professor IMPRI. The conveners for this course are Dr. Shamadip Chattopadhyay ji, Mr. Tikender Singh Pawar ji, Mr. Samir Unhale ji, Mr. Arvind Unni ji, Dr. Simi Mehta ji, Dr. Arjun Kumar ji. We have also shared the course outline and reading resources document in your email for your kind perusal. We will be providing videos of each session for flexible learning at your time and place. Before we start today's session, I would like to announce the housekeeping rules. It is imperative that you join the meeting on time. There will be a Q&A session after each presentation. Share your questions in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. The questions must not be posted as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise. Refrain from making general comments in the question to save time. Without further ado, let's begin today's session. To begin today's session, I would like to hand over to the chair of the program, Professor Manjula Bharti ji, for her remarks about this extensive course. Thank you so much for joining us, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you, IMPRI, and welcome all to another interesting session on urban policy and governance. And I'm sure that this session is going to be very interesting, and the inputs that you are getting from this section will be very good for you to look into the ways in which water governance and urban local governance are intertwined and working with each other for a sustainable tomorrow or a sustainable governance that we're speaking about. So when Professor N C Narayanan is working on this area, he's a professor in IIT, then the way in which like that water is trying to understand how the water governance is a political, social, economic and administrative systems, and how it is important to understand the water management, and especially in urban governance it is important because cities are vulnerable, we all know, to water related issues due to the pollution densities and critical infrastructure. So the cities are faced with different kind of challenges, and challenges are actually being exacerbated by the growing populations, economic activity, and which actually have an adverse impact, you all know, with freshwater supply, sewage systems, and land use. So, in today's section, we expect and we know that the expertise of Professor N C Narayanan will help us to throw lights into this intertwinedness between water governance and city governance, and how it is important to understand the complexities of water governance. And then when we are looking at the cities and city governance and its vast experiences in this field will shed light into understanding, unraveling, analyzing these complexities. And I welcome Professor N C Narayanan into the session, and all ears to hear you from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Manjula. Thank you, IMPRI, for this opportunity. So, can I try sharing my screen for the slides? So it's coming open systems. So is it the entire screen or the window that I should be doing?
So you can go entire screen. That'll be easier.
Entire screen. Okay. Open system preferences. Huh?
Mhm.
Can you see my slides now?
Not yet, sir.
So system Google
Share screen. Professor NC, that is a green icon down, no? Share screen.
Which
Just near to the mute. Start video. Q&A, and after that there's a share screen, a green icon. Could you able to locate it? If you're not able to open it, can you please send to me? Then I can send to them, or I can open it from here. Or to IMPRI directly. Then they can open it from there.
I'm trying to share. Sorry, I'm trying to share it again. So it's entire screen, and but now this share option is not there. Hello.
Yes, sir. I think so. At the bottom, the share and then the entire screen, then OK option must be there at the bottom.
But earlier that came. Now this in this entire screen, the share option. So can I try the window in that also?
Sure. Also, you can share the slides with us as well.
Yeah, we can. So can I send it by WhatsApp?
Yes,
Sure,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir. You can send it by WhatsApp.
Okay. Now the sharing is coming. So let me share this.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
Now
it's
it is
coming.
visible. Yeah, it is visible.
Okay, thank you.
So you can
And
go
when I
first.
do the full screen, is also it's visible.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes. Fine, perfect.
Okay, yeah. So I'm going to talk about urban wastewater and local governance. Are there possible pathways for a sustainable transition? Water, wastewater are closely related. So I'll come to that later. Why wastewater? And I'm going to talk about the wastewater energy linkage, and are there sustainable ways to kind of managing it is a question. So since it's a policy thing, um, we are going to argue that this policy imagination is the major problem, which historically unsustainable. That's my first argument. My second argument is that in that case, do we have ways of arriving at localizing these solutions? So then there's the experience of us developing a methodology. And the third one is our experience in a small town called Alapi in Kerala. And I will end up with our experience of a what we call as a living labs and why it is important for a sustainable transition. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm going to show you the sanitation problem and then talk about the universal solutions and its contextual challenges. So before going into that, the sewage is wastewater from kitchen, bathroom, cleaning, etc., which is what we call as the gray water. Then we have the black water, that's the toilets and human waste, and that's more toxic. And then this all comes to an urban, a town level. We call it the municipal sewage or the municipal wastewater, which is actually a combination of all these sources that we are talking about. And then this has to be managed by the urban local body. So the problem is this, the fact is that 80% of water we use becomes wastewater. And this is what we have done to our cities. So should all water bodies need to remain polluted forever? This is the kind of motivational question that we're asking. And can we do something, especially can the youth something kind of to reverse this, which was a path dependence of the last 50 years of our so-called development, urban development. So this is one of the instances of pollution, urban pollution. where in 1855 this was published in Punch magazine. It's about Father Thames, in London, asking scientist Faraday, "Can you help regain my health?" And Faraday has actually done a lot of water quality studies about that. And then comes in the 1858 the major cholera epidemic, where thousands of people died in London. And then there was this huge hue and cry to bring in some kind of solutions. And John Snow, the public health engineer, and then scientists and other public health engineers actually worked on it, and then they came out with a solution, which is this is the pump house. So the individual households, the waste is actually brought to a pump house like this. This is actually four steam engines, which actually used to pump water parallel to the Thames and store it in a big pond where we can store 27 million gallons of water, and then it is released to the Thames during high tide. So what you did is, in one, you have made it into end of the pipe solution. Second, you transferred the problem from the core London to peripheries of London. But then you can see this kind of imperial structure, which we call as the imperial modernity at the height of Victorian period of accumulation from around the world. So it is a very expensive project sanctioned by the Westminster, because at that time the belief was that cholera is spread by malisma, that is the miasma, that is the smell. So so Westminster was built next to Thames, and that's why the Lords immediately gave sanction to this. But it's a very, very expensive kind of a structure, which then got exported to other parts of the empire. And the and then we in India also we got such systems in basically in British enclaves, and where to kind of protect the health of their soldiers. And so it was what we call as islands of modernity within an ocean of tradition that was there. But still, in 1957, the British Natural History Society declared Thames as dead. And then continuously this is happening. Now also there are newspaper reports of how the British water bodies are getting polluted and it's unswimmable and things like that. So this actually asks the question whether this technology is sustainable also. This is the solution, where you have the big sewage treatment plants and the connected sewages. So this is one of the more imperial structures, the sewer systems in Munich, where you can actually make a tour underground also. You can see the whole, there is a you know some 10 feet diameter two pipes you can see here, which you can walk through. One is the sewage, the other one is the storm drainage, which happens when the floods come in, and then it is stored in a football ground, like underground tank, which settles down and then goes to water bodies. So that's the imagination. And over the ground, this is where it worked. You can see that these are all, again, imperial towns, which have whole very large roads and very privileged neighborhoods. So this is Edinburgh and Berlin again, which are all planned cities built in the 18th century, 17th century, 18th century. And then we also built a city in the 18th century, 1762, by the British, called Alleppey. And here you can see that there is a large canal which connecting the Vembanad Lake and the Arabian Sea. You had one of the biggest ports where we used to export a lot of spices from the four rivers that reach the Vembanad Lake. So this is the connecting link to the Arabian Sea. So you can see that for the imperial extraction, it is basically there we have a very wide canal and very narrow roads, and these roads still remain. So the question mark that we are asking is, can we actually build such structures in our roads? We had done a series of studies. Since we don't have much time, I'm not getting into that. I'm only telling that, this is an ecosystem of, PhD students that I have, who have done the work. So even this presentation is based on 4 completed PhDs who work on, sanitation and waste management. And so the conventional solutions, the major problem is that, one, it's high in energy requirement. Second, 70% of the cost is for sewerage infrastructure. That is this connecting challenges of laying in our narrow roads, those sewer infrastructure. And when we come to the cost, actually, it's actually very high cost, where you can see that, the capital cost is 3 crore per million liters of, per million MLD, million liters per day. If you want a plant like that, the capital cost is 3 crore, with tertiary treatment. It can be 1.6 crore per MLD if it is secondary treatment. But now the National Green Tribunal has come out with a very stringent norms where we need tertiary treatment. Then upgrading 80% of these systems to tertiary standards will need 28,000 crores for capital and 20,000 crore for annual operations. Similarly, if you look at the future projections of the next 10 years, it can actually go to, 25,000, 250,000 crores for, the in capital, and 60,000 crore for annual operations. And this actually excludes the expenses of laying the sewerage lines, and pumping stations, which actually you can add another 70% of the cost also. So is this actually feasible is the question. Then when we looked at the coverage, only 33% of the urban households are connected to this piped sewerage system. So our argument is that, now this opens up a lot of possibilities also. Like in Europe and US, all the cities have actually connected this. So that means they have, locked their technology into these systems, and we still have, possibilities to, get it into, um, oh, sorry. Um, can you see this now? Has my slides gone?
No, sir, we
No,
can
sir.
see it.
There.
The slides you can see?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because I can't see it now. I don't know where.
So you're at urban sanitation in India.
No, I can't see my slides. I've stopped hiding. I asked them to hide it, then it went off. So how do I bring it back?
So you can try resharing.
Oh, stop share and reshare. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Good. Yeah. Windows. It's come. Can you
Yes.
see it now?
There.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So what I was
Yes.
telling was that, so we have a possibility of, 67% not connected. So if there are sustainable technologies, we can leapfrog to a more climate resilient future. So what are the alternatives? We have a lot of natural systems which we call as the nature-based solutions, which work with the principle of gravity and, root zone treatment, anaerobic treatment. So it is actually a kind, it's a possibility. These are smaller systems, so small scale, low in capital and operational costs. Then it is distributed costs, because you need a, good, septic tanks at the level of households, which comes at private investment. Then these are kind of more connected at the, if that's not done there, then it can be more community oriented systems, we call as the septic management systems. There are a variety of all that. And then this is actually making people responsible for their own pollution, and also replacement of freshwater demand for non-potable uses. um, Here you separate the black water and gray water at the origin itself, like in solid waste management, like the organic and plastics are separated. Then you don't need a big treatment system. We can use local skills and materials. It is more cost effective. It's already there in policy documents like the National Urban Sanitation Policy and CPHO manual, but still it cannot be scaled up. So how to make off-grid planning work is the question that we asked. And so for scaling up, we argue that you need improved, more pedagogic tools, um, um, and um, and there are no consultants available for small towns. So the question that we asked is, can we train students and make student citizens, be there, was the question that we asked. So we developed a methodology, um, first asking what kind of data do you need. So one is the flow of wastewater at micro level, and then the production of wastewater, black and gray, at the household and institutions, and then see how it flows, and can we look at it as at a watershed level. So and then you map drains also into it. It becomes a waste watershed. You superimpose the socioeconomic profile of the village. Then, as in all your towns, you can say that a town is developed out of, there are slums there are multi-storied buildings, there are commercial pockets, there are government buildings, sparsely populated government areas. So each town has different kinds of sanitation zones, and can we have differential plans for these different kinds of sanitation zones in a town? Um, and then there could be different treatment locations. It can be more decentralized systems. um, and but who collects the data for this? Crowdsourcing data through a large number of participants. So the question that we asked is, can local academic institutions be local knowledge providers? And this we did along with the University of California, Berkeley, Ishare. And so this is the drain mapping. This is the GIS layers which can come into that. And at the end, we in Alibag we came out with this kind of a zonation system where there are lower income residents predominating, like Kohli fishermen. Their sanitation problem is that it's open defecation, and what they need is construction of public toilets. Whereas the seventh zone is the apartments dominated with middle and upper income households, and they are actually polluting the gutters and the drains. And what they need is a complete and adequate septic kind of systems, and some treatment systems inside these also, which should be actually done privately, borne by them. So uh, so we are actually kind of reversing the sanitation planning here, where in a centralized system, when that comes in, it's the most privileged locations that get the infrastructure first. Here we are saying that if there is a public investment coming in, can go to the most marginalized locations in the city. With this, we started our Alapi experiments, where there was already an ongoing decentralized solid waste management experiment started by the then MLA at the time, Dr. Thomas Isaac, who later became finance minister, because all these centralized solid waste facilities in Kerala had to get closed because of the public protest at a time in 2012. So actually, he's the one who developed a model where you segregate your waste is your problem was the slogan. Can you manage organic waste at the level of with biobins and biogas, and the plastics are collected by several groups, which will then be segregated and sold. Um, it's a project in progress, but the but Kerala, since it doesn't have centralized systems, all towns have resorted to that. So we asked whether this question can be put in um, um, put in the liquid waste management also. So this is the Alleppey town. At one end, eastern end, you have the Vembanad Lake with its beautiful houseboats you can see, and on the western end is the Arabian Sea, and in between there is a network of canals. So this is the central ridge, and it actually, slopes to both the lake and the sea. And so we mapped the systems. When we came in, this was the situation there. We even saw refrigerators, eutrophication of canals. We developed a methodology again, using mobile apps, following the Alibag methodology, mapping the streams and drains, identify discharge points, household survey to map the water and sanitation infrastructure. So this was made into two mobile apps, ODK Collect and OSM Tracker. And then we scaled it up to 330 students from all over India in a summer school in July 2018, where we had engineering, architecture, planning, and social science students from the good universities like IIT, NIT, central universities. So we had a complete data available, and one of the shocking data was when we looked at the water quality. 93% of dug wells were contaminated by E. coli, because every household had a septic tank and a well. And so we thought we should do a pilot intervention. The main canals were mapped, and the through this exercise, the dimensions of the canal, the silt, that is accumulated, the slope, which the civil engineering students did, and with our data, the irrigation department developed a DPR, and the finance minister at that time, he gave 60 crores, and the main canals were, you know, made clean. But then we found that there are feeder canals, and so that is one. Like this is a feeder canal, which we worked on as a model. So you can see the before and after how the feeder canal looks in, and then we found that out of 800 households, the hotspot um, is what we call as a municipal colony, which earlier manual scavengers colony, and they all became municipal workers later. They had only 30% had private toilets. There was a community toilet, and this was the situation. So the central one, we actually made it into individual toilets. You can see before in these two pictures. So you can see that how the toilets are being made. Everybody is given a individual toilets. Their toilets were replaced, and on the left hand side bottom, you can see their community toilet, which was made into a reading room, because we no longer needed a community toilet. So this has become a classroom for the students during the pandemic. We gave them a television also during that time. So the earlier septic tank was made into a DWAT system, which we saw earlier, which works on, it's a nature-based solution. And then the earlier biogas plant, we replaced it with an aerobic system for solid waste management. So this is the colony, the only place in Alleppey which is 100% liquid and solid waste management solution, and that's the most marginalized group also. So, and we made it into some artists came and made the whole colony into a more aesthetically better place. So the insights we have is from that. One is that in that, so in our winter schools alone, there were 400 students that passed through the three winter and summer schools, and later we had almost 500 interns that had come. So education is made real world, engaging in local problems, crowdsourcing of data for better local analysis, visualization. Then experts get access to large amounts of data. Then local participants come into close contact, you know, and we found a lot of sensitive officials who actually kind of helped us also to kind of go through this. Scaling up, we need to improve our pedagogic tools, because still we found that environmental engineering curriculum has only mostly centralized solutions, and so we need a big change in the way this is kind of seen. And then to get into these alternatives, we have already developed protocols, which is methodology plus tools and a templates. So we say that there are no activists readily available, and students can do better analysis. So let them engage with the problem, um, study that, and there's a field-based learning can be integrated into the curriculum. And every year the same colleges come and ask the same questions that makes them student citizens also. So colleges need faculty champions to do that. And then almost 80 people have gone through our, I developed actually 4 PhDs have come out of this and 5 masters. And many of them, and plus my other PhD students, they have come together for a non-profit entity, which actually gives possibility for finishing school of graduates. So people have worked from 6 months to 3 years and 4 years, and some of them have actually gone to 7 years also. We see that these are finishing schools where they get tacit knowledge of intervening and also working with the local community, with the local government, to make solutions work. And the last part is we are working with the government to design facilitative solution regulations and capacity officials to implement these solutions, because much of the regulations are only favor centralized solutions, because that's what they learned. And so that's why we need to go back to curriculum and kind of improve it also. So this is in a nutshell. So if I have time, I have a 10-minute video also which actually explains this. Do I have time for that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Uh, Manjula, I have time.
They have already said S, you know. It is
Okay.
S. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. This is a video made out of this, our project with IDS Sussex. The audio is not coming. I don't know. I don't know why it. I think audio is here.
So we are still seeing your slides only,
Oh, okay, sorry.
not the video. You'll have to click the window where the video is being played.
Yes, yes, yes. Sure, sure. So I'll have to first get out of the other one. Stop sharing. And I can't see this particular window.
Sir, are you playing like the video? Then it will come on the one of the tabs.
Okay, okay. Uh, Still not coming. I think it's okay. Then we can stop it, and
Maybe you can just drop the link on the chat box and somebody from the IMPRI team can play it. Is that possible?
I think that's it. I think we don't have time. There's another lecture also, isn't it? So we can go into a discussion if anybody has any questions.
Sure, sir.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the extremely insightful talk, sir. I would
Thank you.
now like to welcome the chair for her kind remarks on the session, and after that, we can move on to the Q&A session.
Thank you, Professor N C Narayanan, for a very interesting session where he was really looking into this question, how the policy imaginations are historically unsustainable. And so it is important, the imperativeness to look into the local solutions, where he has actually shown an experiment where he has been working on the Canal P and seeing the alternative approaches for that. And very interestingly, also looking into the ways in which it is important to bring the student citizens. I find it very interesting how important it is to bring the student citizens, because all of you, when you're coming in this program, it is also important to have, how to get the tacit knowledge and how to have this curriculum to get into the real world issues and to become a student citizens to understand. So that is what I'm saying. The being involved into the governance issues, and from a multiple issues of your interest and choice, and to become a student citizens, and then to give approaches to the different patterns of solutions that is emerging, which is a participative form and a democratic form, an inclusive form, and the one that is coming from below. So it is important to have this multiple ways of tacit knowledge into it, and that is the importance of this session, especially when water is an everyday issue that is affecting all of our life. So with that thing, I would like, without spending much time, I would like the participants to ask questions, and please take this time to use it effectively.
You can either unmute and raise your hands and ask your questions, or you can type them in the chat box or the Q&A box. So there's a question in the Q&A box by Meenu Mohanji.
Yeah.
She is asking that to what extent would you say such a solution can be scaled to a city like Kochi with a denser population? How will the challenges differ?
It's a very, very interesting question. I say that, our policy imagination in India is guided by Bombay and Delhi, the big cities, like, so 70% of our JNNURM allocations were taken by the cities to build big sewer systems, the kind of model that we saw when I presented. And they can actually absorb 200% also. And 50% slums will never get it. And so what will happen to other 6,000 towns in India is the question that we ask. In that case, Kochi becomes another non-model for the Kerala allocations. So I'm actually working, not in the big three cities, because that will make models only for them. But I feel by the LP can be a model for other 80 towns in India. So there are other people actually working, big consultancies, companies, which will work only in big cities. So I want to develop a group of professionals who can think from the small city angle, because the small town perspective is actually seen as something retrograde, in literature or in common parlance. So I want small town mindsets in policy. I don't know whether I answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Then how involvement of locals can be induced in the process of making wastewater management? I think it's very difficult that we expect every citizen to come into this, because people have other things to do. As all of us, have to go to offices, have to go to colleges and universities. So that's why we need a group of professionals who can actually see this as their option to be in local context and do this. And second, they can do some awareness campaigns, and so we try to do institution building, bringing in all these households and all. Very difficult in urban areas. So I think I was also a big believer of the community practices and all. When I and Manjula were students of Center for Development Studies, the whole People's Campaign in Kerala was happening, which was, so we are all big believers of participation. Uh, but there is a lot of problems in that also, is what I learned through experience. So we need other ways of kind of doing it. So if it is to collect data, if it is for instilling debates within the local government, that's where the student citizen can be a very interesting approach to do that. Then what are the challenges to implementing decentralized sanitation systems in policy and municipal governance? Are the fund allocations made specifically for O&M of this? A very, very good question. One thing is the what Manjula also tells about an epistemological issue. What do we see as waste is the question. What do we see as the solution? It's only the big. It's only the centralized approaches and the kind of centralized technologies that are seen in policy. So one of my PhD students have actually done that, the policy process of sanitation, where she identified that the National Urban Sanitation Policy was actually pushed by GIZ, the German, agency, because they were the ones who were having a consortium of NGOs and other service providers who were actually doing the decentralized options. And they could actually be very successful in influencing National Urban Sanitation Policy. They also suggested city sanitation plans to kind of plan these systems, not only the decentralized, but a mix of that. So to understand that, you need CSPs and all, which was also then taken over by consultants. And at the end of the day, we saw only centralized solutions. And then we found World Bank coming out with what we call as the service level benchmarks. And the ultimate benchmark is to get into an STP. And then we tied the central state allocations of the finance commissions into that in sanitation. So it's all kind of, fell in place in policy. And then we had flagship programs like JN in Environment and Amrit, which actually, promotes this. So everything is falling in place except this in policy. And O&M of these systems can be easily made. We have actually trained the local two women from the local from the local community to do the kind of daily maintenance of this. And but we have entrusted the municipality to pay them, so that there's a local governance responsibility, but then there's a community responsibility also. So this twin responsibility is actually making these systems work, whereas in many DWARDs actually stopped functioning because there was no O&M infrastructure for them. I think Mr. Lalit Kumawat has a question.
Yes, sir. I wanted to ask, there have been successful technologies that are being deployed regarding sustainability across the Nordic nations, which include Nordic countries like Sweden, Finland. They are doing remarkable work in context to the sustainable technologies. They are being actively implemented. And if we were to have a localized approach wherein community building or at a from my understanding of policy, finance is a significant problem for municipalities and local development because they have limited resources to operate with, and influencing the policy takes a significant political will to have the convergence of the technologies as well as the execution on field. And if we were to fix things in India in context to that, if we were to have, localized partners wherein we could implement sustainable technologies successfully proven, which have been working across the other countries, why are we not able to do so in the local governance context, is what my question is. And secondly, if we were to have solutions wherein we could have even financial leverages to implement sustainability from the industry, then how could we go further about it?
Excellent question. I'll start with the second part. Actually, in a very minuscule way, we have demonstrated in a town that this can be done. Whatever you have told about,
Okay,
one analysis can be done by locally using
okay,
students. Second,
okay,
we demonstrated, but as you rightly told, we could not get government allocations because of the PWD manual and the procedures that are there. Then we brought in what you at the end told a CSR. So, through that we demonstrated, and now we are lobbying with the government that, see, this is working for the last 6 years, can you do something?
okay,
So I think, and then but then who are the service providers?
okay,
So that is why this what we call as the, after the student citizens, we call something as the finishing school, where we are training these people. So
okay,
this is an incubation period where we want them to kind of make them into enterprises, also small enterprises,
okay,
which can actually implement it. So
okay,
my the non-profit that my students started, it's
okay,
registered as a startup also, in
okay,
central and state governments. Now
okay,
they are trying for the affiliation to be a
okay,
service provider. So if you
okay,
get that, then they will not be only be doing service provision. They'll
okay,
be training other people to kind of come and work there. So what we call as a finishing school program also, we are starting now to kind
okay.
of do this kind of. So whatever you told, we are
Yeah.
trying. We are trying in a level.
Sir,
Maybe
it
in
could,
1 or 2 years we'll have some.
sorry to interrupt you, but we have successful efforts, or I work as a strategy officer at a engineering firm. So we have been in talks with the Nordic technology companies, firms, to introduce these net zero technologies in India during the construction stage or during the design stage, so that we can work around with sustainable technologies at the ground level and we can get them implemented in our nation, because that is what the future of tomorrow is. And if we were to have sustainable construction, sustainable technologies implemented, specifically in context to water being very essential for our lives, then we could, if we were having non-profits, as you said, sir, in the at the implementation stage, and if we have a channel proposal which we can give to the other private industry players that, look, we can help you out with the implementation stage, we could still come to a talking arrangement in that context.
Yeah. Do I have time to answer this question, Samprikta? Okay. So, yeah, that's also a good suggestion. We are actually working with HSBC to kind of scale this up to 12 towns in Western India, 4 states. And
Okay.
so this has actually people from the ministry also in our advisory committee.
Okay.
So HSBC may open up a portfolio for this, and
Okay.
also they may they convince, because the HSBC top brass are in the India Sanitation Coalition,
Okay. Okay.
so they have a very good linkage with the government also. So that is
Okay.
what. A second, we have a network which we are working with, IHS Bangalore, CEPT University Ahmedabad, Center for
Okay.
Science and Environment Delhi, who
Okay.
are some of the so there's a network also which actually
Okay.
try to develop this knowledge, and kind of
Okay.
so I think these are the things. I think in 2-3 years I think we will be somewhere, but with a very lighter note at the end. You talked about the Nordic countries, and so I was in a CSC webinar. I was a participant, and then my fellow panelist was from Copenhagen, you
Okay.
know and then they were telling about how they did this storm drainage system so nicely, the kind of technologies and things like that.
Okay.
And then Devendra Kapoor, who is the CSC policy head, he
Okay.
asked the question, what's your population?
Okay.
And
Okay. Interesting,
then
sir.
then it's then it's 6.5 lakhs. So then they Davinder was telling, this settlement outside my office has 13 lakh people.
Yes,
So
sir. My
we have to
concern
be
is that
really.
have implemented it for smaller structures. If we could localize that in the Indian context, then we could have a sustainable infrastructure plan which could be in place where implementation could begin.
Sure. But I also want the environmental engineers, the next generation, to kind
The
of think.
community and participatory planning should go about sustainable implementation, wherein it should be able to leverage the
So,
public-private partnership models for development.
so at least can environmental engineers and other engineers do 2 months of immersive training, and we can develop a curriculum for them. I think that will actually lead to some 20-year change, in 20, 30 years.
Yes, sir. Yes,
I'm not kind of in a hurry at all. I think, the people whom I train have to actually do this transition is what I think.
yes, sir. Yes, yes. It's about the
That is
future.
that's the only sustainable way to kind of make these transitions.
Absolutely right, sir. Absolutely right. Agreed on it. Thank you for the answer, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So,
So there's
oh,
another raised hand.
Sarah Burden has a question, I think. Yeah.
Hi, so my name is Sarah, and I was actually very interested in the student citizen part, like Professor Manjula said, and I was wondering if the fact that you could build such robust student networks to initiate action is also a factor of the political climate of the state, and probably an emphasis on praxis and decentralization and participation that we don't really see in other states in India. Now that you mentioned the possibility of potentially extending the project to other towns and small cities in Western India, do you think this will be a problem? Do you think we can build such robust networks even in other states? And also, just an adjoining question that I know that the role that civil society perhaps plays in Kerala is very different from how civil society or CSR works in other states. So, how will that then affect the scalability of such projects? Just wondering. Thank you.
I am a very young man of 60 years old, and I'm a die-hard optimist. So I want to kind of instill that into students and younger people. And otherwise, we can actually criticize and stay with our, and business as usual can happen, or we can try it out. For example, mid-November, I'm going to bring in a lot of assistant professors in environmental engineering to IIT Bombay, not even associate professors, because they are the ones who have some kind of, scope to kind of change, people in the 30s, then asking them whether, where. So I actually tried it out in IIT Palakkad, NITs, and nobody has told that, what I'm doing is wrong, or, is it, because I'm not an environmental engineer. So, but they didn't say that my science is wrong. um, that means, and then if you bring in, because the problem with this epistemology is that they ask the question, what is the quality of water that you are going to put into nature, what is the, BOD of that, and things like that. And then even the NGT tells that, it is 3. So if you want to get a 3 mg BOD, then you have to go to membrane technology, which is actually the highest possible technologies, which very high in cost. So I told you the financial cost then, So when you have more than technology, a financial, then there is this sanitation divide, inclusion, finance, sustainability, energy cost, for example. So in my video, I would have shown you that the global demand for sanitation infrastructure, energy demand, is equivalent to the highest GHG emission sector, aviation. Both are equivalent. And in our studies, it's shown that 70% of the, cost of water and sanitation infrastructure of towns goes for energy, and they don't pay. So the public utility of water and public utility of electricity, both are in a vicious circle of sustainability. So can we separate this energy? And, so that is the issue that I'm working in Western India. I'm now bringing out numbers of the energy problem. I have numbers of finance, and I have numbers of this social inclusion problems. So can we bring in these three normative concerns and then argue against this tyranny of standards, this technocentric perspective? And that is what the environmental engineering curriculum should now bring in. Because, for me, in my generation, disciplinarity was okay. Now then you need interdisciplinary things, this water energy nexus and its climate implications in a climate changing world, the flooding, the disasters that happen, all these have to be part of the wash infrastructure curriculum that should be there. And then it should not be only interdisciplinary, it should be transdisciplinary, where we go to the locations where the problem is and then work with that. So that's called the transdisciplinary engagements. So after 7 years of work from last year, we are calling the Alleppey experiment a living lab, because one living lab is one where the university goes to where the problem is and study that. Second, it's iterative learning also. Otherwise, scholars give solutions and go back, but that also produces three more problems. Who will study that? So that's why this, for iterative learning, we need people, and that's where the finishing school professionals can actually learn, and it's a constant learning also. Our learning curve is not complete at any point of time. So I think another hand is there, or it's only your hand?
I think it was just mine. I lowered mine. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
So there are a few questions in the Q&A box.
Sure,
You can
I will
take them.
go to that. Maintenance and post implementation, I already told. Then how do you rate political will? Political will not come from the sky. We have to create the demand from below. That's what student citizens should do. And otherwise, it's a escape route of engineers who tells that I have the best technology. It's a politician's problem. We need political will. But our understanding is that that political will have to be created. Democracy is always fought and won. It's not given from above. Right, Professor Manjula? Any other questions?
So there's one more question by Sona Maske. It's there in the Q&A box itself. It
Okay.
says, from community toilets to individual toilets, how to initiate awareness in the community, and what type of innovative ideas that one can practice with the help of microbiology students.
Okay. I can't see that question. Okay. I think, these are the future. If you are a microbiologist or an environmental engineer, these are very pertinent questions. And the very simple question that I want to ask you is that, why can't we have a septic tank which almost 100% efficient? Now it's actually 30% to 40% efficient. That's why we need all this infrastructure. So if you can land it in the moon in 60s, in 2024, why are we not having a good septic tank which can treat it all? Now it's on the other way around. Gates Foundation is coming out with a toilet which we have to, some 700 degrees centigrade. It has to be made into all dust and, kind of, and it's very, very energy intensive. And and with the patents that they have, it may be, kind of very costly for us also. So they have actually, Gates Foundation, after years of work in sanitation, have completely withdrawn from the global south, and they're going to test the toilets in France and USA. So so that's why this, from imperial modernity to industrial modernity, I don't think that solutions will come from up there. So I don't think it's a mind-boggling research, to have a kind of efficient inoculum which can actually eat it out. Then the inoculum should not eat us up. But so I'm just asking you the question. If you are asking the biochemistry questions, why can't our research do that in the next 5 years? Then we don't need all this drama at all. Connecting sewers, a membrane technology, getting it out into all locations. I'm just being extreme to kind of make you think.
Hello, sir. Am I
Yes.
audible? Sir,
Yes.
you just mentioned that the Gates Foundation has withdrawn from the Global South. So, if I may just know, like, how do you say that? Like,
They were funding what you call as the FSM,
yeah,
fecal sludge management, which was
yes.
actually a very good innovation, where you need septic tanks and then you need only treatment plants, because the 70% of the connecting costs are the major problem. Where with two or narrow roads we can't actually make that infrastructure work. So the innovation was that you can actually do it with a good suck it out to a safely into a tanker like structure, and then transport it to that. So they actually worked with different states, with different partners like this. IIHS was the partner in Tamil Nadu. Then CEPT University was a partner in Maharashtra. Center for Policy Research was a partner in Orissa. And then they had multiple partners like, KPMG, and who worked with them. And then first what they did was they had 2 or 3 towns that demonstrated that this can happen. And then they asked the state government to kind of bring in money, but with a lot of help, and from the, so it was a lot of investment by the Gates Foundation. Then they suddenly now they are moving out in a very, so it's a and telling that but because they have developed a uh, very high end toilet technology,
Mm.
so they are completely shifting into that. It's a U-turn in policy.
Okay. Got it, sir. Thank you.
I thought we have another talk today, isn't it?
Is it Dr.
Yes,
Samir
so
Unhale?
Huh?
Yeah, Dr. Samir Unhale's talk on sanitation.
Yeah, I'm sorry that he's waiting.
Mm.
Yeah.
But so many questions. So it's
Yeah,
also
yeah. No,
important to.
I have time. I don't have any problem. But
since Samir Unhale sir hasn't joined yet, so we
oh,
have
sure.
time.
Okay. No, no,
And
I'm available.
also,
I'm available.
yes, sir, also the fellows can discuss the research questions and topics with you to gain the insights and expertise. So,
Okay.
anyone anyone who is willing to kind of share their experience and also discuss the research topic is free to do so. Please raise your hands and go ahead.
Okay. Lalit Kumawat.
Yes, so the problem interacting with these foreign entities, as I said, Nordic technologies or any for that case, when we go for any kind of interactions, there's a significant tussle involved in context to technology transfers, because they are willing to sell their technologies, but they're not willing to use the technologies for the greater good. And this has been a narrative of the global south in context to the sustainable transition that we are looking ahead in context to development. We are having significant support from international institutions regarding the sustainable transition, but it is only in letter and not in spirit. So how could we cater to that from a participatory planning or from a community perspective?
These are all not rocket technologies.
Okay.
So why can't we develop it from below?
So we do have a development coming in from below, but we don't have a common platform to have scale these technologies in at the implementation into implementation. That is what I believe.
So
Me.
that's a small model that I've developed.
Yes, sir. I'm very highly inspired by the model that you just
So can
proposed.
we replicate that is the question. Can
Yes, sir.
each university, uh, you know, um, and other places actually do that.
Absolutely. IIT Bombay, being a very reputed and prestigious institution of our country, could lead the way in that context. And we could have other universities, especially the private universities, taking up and scaling these kind of programs at their places, so that would allow the local talent to come up, as you said, that you want it to be localized, wherein the students are taking these programs ahead.
Yeah. So I think that's one way out. Yeah. So
Okay.
we have the protocols, and we
Okay.
are open. We don't have any patents. We are
Okay.
ready to give it to anyone.
Wonderful. Wonderful, sir. Thank you,
Yeah.
sir.
Mm.
Thank you so much, sir. Seeing no more questions, I think we can move ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for an extremely insightful talk. And we wholeheartedly thank you for giving such a nice session topic in the topic of urban water and local governance. I'm sure that the participants gained valuable insights from your session. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prof N C Narayanan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So can I go out now? Yes. Thank you.
I would now like to invite Mr. Samir Unhale ji, Joint Commissioner, Department of Municipal Administration, Government of Maharashtra, Urban Practitioner Visiting Senior Fellow IMPRI. Sir will be guiding us on the topic Urban Local Governance, Sanitation and Solid Waste Management. A very warm welcome and over to you, sir.
Hello, Vishal. Samprikta, Samir sir hasn't joined yet, I think. So we may take up more questions in the meanwhile.
Okay. I think in the meanwhile, the participants can then discuss their abstracts with Manjula ma'am, if ma'am you're willing to guide them through the process.
Let me also see, like whether I can, because right now I'm not in my office, I'm in my hometown in Kerala. Let me also see whether I can quickly, get some PPTs which discuss about, the research methods that I can start looking, but give me 2 minutes for that.
Sure, ma'am.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, you can go full screen.
Fine.
You can go to slideshow and there you
I know that, but then that's not working here.
okay, ma'am.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's fine, ma'am.
So I'll be, like when we are till Dr. Samir comes, I can just discuss about, because we are going for importance understanding of conducting a research, and it's important also to see that research is not coming from vacuum. So we need to see that, okay, why should we do a qualitative research or a quantitative research? And here basically I'll be looking at research in social sciences and how it is important. See that basically we would like to see that the research is basically a systematic and organized way of, we all are having knowledge, but then through research means we are doing it in a systematic way, acceptable way, and recognizable way, so that, okay, now there is certain scientific methods can be coming from that. So when we are doing research, that is something that I always wants to tell you, that we need, when you are having a research title, then that title will be having key variables. For example, if I'm saying climate governance and gendered vulnerability. So to understand climate governance and gendered vulnerability, it has two keywords. What is it? One is a climate governance and the other one is a gendered variability. And now you are trying to understand this and the connection between these two. So, but the climate governance, when you're saying about it, the climate governance can be understood through a social way, how the climate governance, administrative way, the social way, political way, economic way, cultural way. So, the climate governance is a value loaded term. So, in your research, how you are going to understand it? So, you are operationally defining. For example, when I'm saying I'm trying to understand the income and how income is important for the standard of living. When I'm saying income operationally, I need to define, I mean the monthly income. I need the income of a household member. Or I say that, okay, income of the female persons, if I would like to say how much important. So you are operationally defining the variables that is coming from a theoretical constructs and then trying to see. So when you are looking at gendered, I'm saying example, when you're trying to look at climate governance and gendered vulnerability, then you need to say that which are the theories that speaks of climate governance and what are the concepts that comes from the climate governance. See, climate governance, are you trying to look it from a mitigation perspective? Are you trying to look it from an adaptation perspective? In mitigation perspectives, what you're trying to see, are you looking at the carbon footprint? Are you looking at the water rise? Are you looking at, other ways in which the pollution is happening? In adaptation, what the ways in which you are trying to look at? Are you looking from a risk perspective? Are you looking from a hazard perspective? Are you looking at the coping mechanism? Are you trying to see it from the resilience mechanism? Then you need to operationally define that, okay, in the climate governance, I will be looking at the adaptive mechanism. And in the adaptive mechanism, I'm trying to look at this and the others will be coming to speak about it. So you need to, that gives you the space to explore that ideas in a nuanced and a deep manner. So you need to operationally define the term and where you have to come about, like I'm saying about temperature, what does it mean, which temperature it means. So you have to operationally define, and that as the researcher is your prerogative. And because you are owning the research, right? It is your research. So you have to tell, what are the variables that I am going to define this, in gender. Here, in gender, I means only the binary, male and female. It is say, okay, in my research, I mean, gender means only, I'm not looking at. Or I can say, okay, in my research, gender, I means, like LGBTQ perspective or LGBTQI perspective. I will be giving more importance to intersex. So you are defining your operational variables, and as when you are looking at your questions and when you're looking at your research, it is especially that your proposal, you see, this is the first point, you see whether what is my constructs, what is the operational definition I am giving, and that operational definition, whether it is coming from a theory and which theory that is speaking about, what is the conceptual dimension in which I am going to see and I am going to operation define. This is important. We are not doing. That is what I said. Is it a scientifically approved trajectory you are moving? And that is important to make that. Did you get it? So when you have, then you have a variables, which are variables, could be independent variable and a dependent variable. When I'm saying a climate governance, I can say climate governance as an independent variable, and how the climate governance is affecting the gendered variables, which is a dependent variable. So the gendered variability, then that changes. Or I can take a gendered variability as that is based on how I to choose, gendered variability as an independent variable, and say how caste, class, and then their positionality in the spaces is affecting the variability. So how that in that, how the women belonging to different castes are differently affected. How women belonging to different class positions are differently affected. How women living in different speciality, like women living in a coastal area, women living in a high altitude area, women living in a plain area, how they are being affected by the climate governance. So again, that you are bringing the connections between an independent and a dependent variable.
Sorry to interrupt, ma'am. Mr. Sameer Unhale sir has joined.
Yeah.
So I think we can move on to his session.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much. So moving on, I'm delighted to invite Mr. Sameer Unhale ji, Joint Commissioner, Department of Municipal Administration, Government of Maharashtra, Urban Practitioner, Visiting Senior Fellow, IMPRI. Sir will be guiding us on the topic Urban Local Governance, Sanitation and Solid Waste Management. A very warm welcome, and over to you, sir.
So thank you very much. Thank you, Manjula ma'am, for inviting here. Thank you, Arjun. It's great to be on the IMPRI's various activities. So first of all, I must share that I'm here in my personal capacity. So whatever I'll be sharing are my personal views, more of academic responses onto my experiences. So when we talk of governance, fundamentally, when we are considering cities, we need to understand the legal position that the municipal government lies with the general body of the municipal corporation or the council. So that's the general body in which all the councillors come together. The act is very clear, which states that the municipal government shall rest with the municipal corporation or the municipal council, which means the general body, which comprises of all the councillors together. So that will be the first starting point for us. And we need to remember that whenever we are studying policy and governance, the Constitution of India is the most basic document that is available to us. And therefore, we all should make the efforts to go through the Constitution of India and look for the relevant the provisions and articles which deal with the matters of urban governance. As we know, the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act is very often referred to as a major introduction in this in the efforts where we recognize the urban local bodies. Well, it is not to say that the reference to the urban local bodies did not existed prior to that. In fact, the Constitution clearly refers municipal governments in the 7th schedule when it is sort of responding to the establishment of municipalities, and also especially in the state list. Second peculiarity of the Constitution is that municipal governments is essentially a state list subject. When it is in the state list of the 7th schedule, and therefore there are limitations for the union government to really project itself into any of the policies which you would like to work on. So therefore, due to this peculiar constitutional, provisions, we find that the government of India and therefore also the Union Parliament does not have, I repeat, does not have any mandate to work on the municipal bodies. So what it does essentially is functions through the various centrally sponsored schemes. Now, most of these centrally sponsored schemes are called as missions. One of the most important missions in urban context was probably from 2005-6 plan era, when the urban renewal mission was introduced with government of India into the municipalities, and for the first time substantial budgetary allocations were made to the various parts, various submission. In fact, there were 4 submissions of the urban renewal, of which one was the basic services for urban poor. Second was the urban infrastructure and governance submission. Third was the IHHSDP submission, which was for the housing for smaller municipalities. And of course, the housing part and the UID SSMT, which were the 4 submissions working in infrastructure, working in housing for the larger urban area and the smaller urban area. If you go through the 74 the articles under the constitutional amendment introduced, you will find that many provisions are made in the 74th constitutional amendment. The articles which are introduced essentially talk of establishing a municipalities, A, B, setting up the metropolitan governance structure, and C, you will find the provisions which talk on the financial relationship of the municipalities and the union and the state, wherein the Central Finance Commission has been specifically empowered to make recommendation on the resource allocation to the state so as it can fulfill its duty for the municipal bodies giving all the necessary functions which have been allocated. Another important feature of the 74th Act is the introduction of Schedule 12. The Schedule 12 introduces around 18 functions to the municipal bodies, which was not the case earlier. I think we have to understand that the introduction of municipal governments in India started with 1850. The first act was in the Act of 1850, in which the provisions it was called as the Act of 24 of 1850, 1st January 1850, by the then British East India Company's central government, and a provision was made in which the governor of the presidency or the chief commissioner of the chief commissioner's province could establish a municipality in his area when he received the proposal from the collector, and that is often taken as the introduction of the modern municipal government in India. Prior to 1850, 1st January 1850, you had only the presidency towns like then Bombay, then Madras, and then Calcutta, who had some resemblance of the urban governance, the modern governance or the municipal governance structure. So this I was basically trying to introduce the very fundamental provisions which influence most of the urban governance even now in 2025. Now, the discussion we'll be doing in this is more of a practitioner's experiences on the 2 issues. One is the sanitation and other is the solid waste management. In fact, I see Vipin is also a young municipal commissioner from Maharashtra who has joined, and I'm sure after this session you could really take his experiences, because he's one of the person who has really performed well in most of the functioning, and even he had received the UN Habitat Scroll of Honor maybe I think year back, because I will ask Arjun to do request Vipin to share his experiences after the session is done. So we are talking of sanitation. So what is the provision of sanitation as far as the constitution, as far as the act is concerned? Now we have to remember there is no uniform act in the government, in the Union of India. There is no central act which has been passed on the municipalities, because precisely the constitutional peculiarity we had discussed, that it is a state-list subject. So all the 28 state governments and even those union territories who may be having a legislature are expected to pass their own separate act for the municipalities as far as their states are concerned. So in case of Maharashtra, there will be the Maharashtra Municipal Council Act for the smaller area, urban area, and the Municipal Corporation Act for the larger urban area. And so would be the case of most of these 28 states in India. So therefore, there will be significant variations between various state governments and various state laws that are made that govern the municipal bodies of those respective states. So for example, if you go to Kerala, Kerala has a different Municipal Corporation Act where the mayor is the executive authority, and the chief administrative officer is often called as the secretary to the council. Like he's in Kerala, the chief executive is the mayor and not the bureaucrat there. If you come to Maharashtra, then probably the role of the mayor of the corporation is like a speaker of a legislature. I mean, he is supposed to conduct he's the presiding officer to conduct the meetings of the council of the corporation, and he doesn't has any municipal executive authority. The executive authority of in the state of Maharashtra, in the municipal corporation, lies with the municipal commissioner. So he is the chief executive of the municipal body, and therefore the the deliberative wing and the executive wing is totally bifurcated in this state. Similarly, we will find various different conditions in different states, and it's precisely this leads to a variation in the implementation and execution of various welfare and various mission program. Last necessary point was the financial strength of the municipal bodies. As we know, again, the 20th states had the financial strength of the various states of the municipalities were different. Some municipalities had the power to levy octroi, some didn't have. There was a property tax levied, and there were other charges which could be levied. And therefore, one thing to remember in urban policy is that the various local bodies, urban municipalities in India have different financial capacities due to the acts which are there. Now, Maharashtra had a history of octroi, which is the most flexible and elastic, indirect tax, and therefore these were financially stronger. So the octroi was a lot of opposition to that, and after we turned into the local body tax, which was again the indirect account-based tax, and of course after the GST, you find most of such taxes have been subsumed into the GST, and I think Maharashtra does give a substantial amount of grants as a loss to the municipalities, which is borne from its own state exchequer. So the financial strength of the municipalities have a strong impact or influencing factor onto how the cities can deliver the various services that it has to give. Because some services cannot create money, some services cannot create the payback for the expenditure made into that, and therefore has to be done from its own expenditure, from its own pockets. So some states, the solid waste management functions are with the municipalities. In some states, they are not. Especially in some, I mean, I'm not talking of India, but in other Nordic countries, we find a special purpose vehicle is maybe as a company form in Nordic countries, which takes care of the various services. So this is another peculiarity in the urban system of India, and maybe the peculiarity of the urban policies, that for the decentralized democracy and strengthening of the grassroots institution, the Constitution of India mandates that the function must be given to the municipalities, and therefore also the financial requirement to fulfill those. So after this broad governance structure and the financial arrangements, peculiarities that we see in municipalities in India, as we know, there are more than 4,500 municipalities. Some of them are small of transitory area, like say 10,000, 15,000. Some, of course, are big, like maybe like the Mumbai or the MCGM, which is almost more than 12.5 million, and the budget of almost 55,000 crores. So the variation, of course, is quite big in India. And the third lesson we must learn is that any statement that we make for the urban issues in India cannot have a uniform impact across the geography and across various types of cities, because some cities will be different, they will be rich, they will be big, they will be competent. Some cities will be still transitioning from the rural to urban context. And therefore, they may not have the capacity. So very often we say overwhelming and overarching generalized statement regarding the urban situation of India is therefore precisely inaccurate, as it cannot describe the variations. So what we normally do is we identify the various geographical and climatic situations in India, and also the various the populations they might be having, and also the financial strength. And these three dimensions, by and large, do clearly indicate the probability of the status or the condition of the municipality. Now, as we are saying, sanitation has always been a part of the municipal duties. As we know earlier, there were manual scavenging of the human excreta, which almost was a sanitary slavery, which was imposed upon particular caste. So the caste dimension from sociological angle is extremely, important and determining, and also affects all that we see in sanitation sector. Now, as we know, I think it was 1989 when a law was passed that the manual scavenging was banned and made a criminal act. So any person or any even there's a very major legislation that we see in which the union, again, as we say, the urban department does not have the capacity to make any laws for the government of India. The Union Parliament often uses the other ministries to pass the act to make impact on the urban India. So even that's good. It was the Ministry of Social Empowerment's powers were used even by the ministry as well as the Union Parliament to pass a law essentially affecting urban context where the manual scavenging was totally banned. So even now there is a consistent, consistently we find people, this issue getting raised up. Earlier it was only to the human excreta touching the people who have to move that by hand, but now we see progressively it is getting expanded, in which even people who have to do that dirty work in the underground drainage system, which we often find one of the important, we always find, the some deaths happening because the methane collection during the, even in the septic tanks and the underground drainage system, while if the people enter while cleaning, many of them have died, and it has led to major public outcry, rightfully so. So what we here to understand that the public policy instruments that are available in a particular sector in the urban area need not essentially lie with the city government. So despite the constitutional limitations on the union government and the union parliament, we do find policy interventions done by the central government to ensure that critical issues and especially during in the welfare are executed. And the sanitation scenario of India is one of the best example in this context, that we find union making very harsh acts. So even when we talk of policies, regulation or making an act is just one part of that. So what are the other policy levers available to any government to intervene in a particular sector? So as we are dealing, this course is essentially about policies. So you need to understand and comprehend as to what are the levers, policy levers available to the to government, which can be union or state or city or the rural Jilla Parishad or whatever. So one, of course, is making an act with the help of this legislature, which may be state or the union parliament. Union Parliament. So what we now see, after making an act of banning manual scavenging, we find institutional approach in which new institutions are established to create an impact on that particular sector. So second, we find is a commission has been formed, number one, with the Safai Karmachari Ayog, as it is National Safai Karmachari Ayog. It is a semi-judicial sort of ayog. It's a commission in which the members have a quasi-judicial power. They can call people on summon, take oath, take affidavits of oaths, and also pass on action. So second intervention, policy intervention in the case of sanitation is by a union government forming a commission for the welfare of the Safai Karmachari. So that is the second policy intervention you see in sanitation to control and influence and impact the outcomes of a particular sector. The third type of approach which is available is to form a financial development corporation. So this is a third way in which the finances can be the financial allocations and financial incentivization can be done, by which you can impact and influence a particular sector. So the national government, the union government has made this National Safai Karmachari Finance Development Corporation. So this is a third type of policy intervention done by the union government, in which loans are given to the Safai Karmacharis, the self-help groups are formed, and various other financial incentives can be given to this Safai Karmachari. So there's a third way in you can create a policy intervention by forming an institution which focuses on the financial incentives and various bankable projects. So a lot of work has been done by that, in which funding has been made. So this is what the government has done in sanitation. While fourth, of course, is the centrally sponsored scheme into the sector of sanitation. So how is it being done? It was done by the Swachh Bharat mission. A mission is a relatively new word that we use, but primarily it is a centrally sponsored scheme as far as the budgetary allocations are concerned. So this Swachh Bharat scheme tried to focus one was the input or the actions they were to take, which was essentially giving incentive to beneficiaries to build or construct a toilet at home. So that was the intervention for which, what was the policy? Give subsidy to that. And what was the impact which was expected out of that? The impact was that the city had to become open defecation free. Because as we know, those you are studying policies, so those who have studied political science or maybe public administration or the policy sciences, you will realize that when you make a policy, it has to serve, it is it's a intervention made to reach a particular destination. The goal is very clear. So if you cannot have a policy intervention without you being clear, you having clarity about the goal. So this clarity of goal as far as the sanitation sector is concerned, through the Swachh Bharat mission, was to ensure that the country becomes open defecation free. Reason was, of course, the health and health elements, because the most of the mortality that happens due to waterborne disease is exclusively because of sanitation issue, because of imperfect treatment of the vehicles waste. And this element was identified, and therefore as a student of policy, you will realize how you design a policy. How should you how can we create a set of interactions, how can we create a network of causal actions which will lead to your goal. So health, as you know, it is also a very important part on the SDG, or the Sustainable Development Goal, mostly Goal 6. And of course, India did started working before the SDGs were put into place. And therefore, this is a intervention. The fourth type of policy intervention that we see is by a centrally sponsored scheme. So speaking about the centrally sponsored scheme of Swachh Bharat, first part A was, of course, the creation, giving financial subsidy to every household, irrespective of whether it's legal, illegal, formal, informal, to have a home, have a toilet at the home. So this, as you know, the financial allocations were huge. Tens of millions of such latrines were constructed. Of course, when we try to study the impact of a policy, when we are studying public policy, it doesn't mean that you just design a policy and leave it. It has to be implemented, and therefore it is often said that the politics in India is politics of election, secondly is the politics of policies, and third is the politics of implementation. So when as a student of public policy, we ought to keep all these three things in mind, that we are just not talking of electioneering is just a part of it, but maybe it is 1 month in the 5 years, but the rest of 4 years and 11 months is the policies and the implementation which is done, for which we ought to have the awareness. So these are under the broader framework. What you realize now is how is the execution happening in the cities. What we discussed right now was more of the constitutional element, the science of policy making, which is relevant to the sector, sanitation sector. And then implementation issues are of course there, because as we know, in India, we are having around more than 4,500 municipalities and around 8,000 census towns. Of course, this is 2011 data, and maybe by whenever we'll be having our next census, so it will substantially jump. It is often said that we are around 35%, 36% of the India's population is urban. But if you look at the absolute number, it is more than 50 crores. we have 140 crores and try to calculate what is 35.7%, it will be around 50 crores. So huge population is staying in urban India. India is also a country of towns and cities, and by itself, it will be the cities of India by itself will be the third largest country of the world. So that is the people, that's the number, population and the urban load that we are considering. So secondly, connected with the issue of sanitation, the public policies of sanitation, what we have also is the inevitable connection of of the liquid waste management or the sewerage treatment, as you find. So again, within the ministry, we have multiple ministries, and by and large, this issue often goes to the Department of maybe water supply and sewage. So some states have a different Department of water supply and sewage. Some states, both the departments are clubbed together. So of course, will change. I'm connecting the solid liquid waste management or the sewage treatment just cursorily, because we cannot talk of sanitation without the discussion of the sewage treatment. So the what again, as a student of public policy or the policy, urban policy, when we are discussing, we again find a similar set of instructions. You have a massive centrally sponsored scheme, which is essentially Amrut, and also in the Swachh Bharat Part 2, in which, if I'm not mistaken, together the investment declared, the allocation, as we say in the language of plans and policies, was around 4 lakh crores or 4 trillion rupees, precisely for the sector of sanitation and both water supply as well as the sewage treatment part. That was a huge investment made. So what is the current status now? That most of the towns are now working for underground drainage system. Now that is an extremely capital intensive scheme. If you try to consider a water supply and sewage treatment as a profit and loss center, as it done by a private sector, then it is essentially a huge investment which does not recover the cost. So that has been one of the reasons as to why the water supply and sewage sector in urban areas were not probably, you don't see it happening much. It is after a huge capital intensive investment that are made. Now we are seeing many cities coming up with a water supply scheme and simultaneously with the sewage treatment plant. So I just wanted to show the connection between the sanitation and the sewage treatment sector, because there are a lot of interconnections in urban areas, precisely due to the because of a huge population. I mean, then very high dense. When they have a dense population, all the issues get interconnected. So it is also the proximity and the population density that take us to this issue of interconnectedness. And then on the third part, I will like to just about the solid waste management. So solid waste management, the topic of solid waste management is just not throwing garbage or throwing litter on the street. So we again see that we saw when we again analyze this issue on the basis of a public policy context, we see solid waste management. There was a regulatory part. B, there was the centrally sponsored financial incentivization part. And C, you see a huge citizen engagement done by the people's participation and making it and declaring it as a people's movement and not a program of the municipality. So as far as the regulatory part is concerned, again, it's a different ministry. It is the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, as we call it now, and the Pollution Control Board, the Central Pollution Control Board and the State Pollution Control Board, and along with it, the institution of the National Green Tribunal and the benches around the country. They try to take the regulatory approach in the public policy domain on issues of solid waste management. So that is one policy response for that. You create an act, statute, which is the Environmental Protection of 85, and the various rules that are made under it. So as we know, there is a separate rule under the Environmental Protection Act called the Municipal Solid Waste Management Rules. It came in 15 and again was changed, I think, latestly by 22 or 23. So this becomes a regulatory response of the government in public policy domain, in which enactments are made, regulatory institutions are made, and then penal provisions are made. Third is the punitive approach to public policy, that you create penalties and punishments and maybe even imprisonment and fines if a particular compliance is not done. So that is the punitive approach of public policy, which you see in this context of solid waste management. So what was the centrally sponsored scheme? It was again Swachh Bharat. Swachh Bharat treated the focus of Swachh Bharat, as also was the case under the earlier JNNU RM of 2005 to 14, was to fund the projects and that for solid waste management, transportation and treatment. So that was the focus of the financial allocation under the Swachh Bharat mission as a centrally sponsored scheme. We find funding being given to municipalities for creating a transport mechanism for house-to-house collection. So house-to-house collection was one of the basic intervention made, which tried to reach to a particular that the garbage has to be collected from the home and not only that is thrown on the streets. So what it created, this system, house-to-house collection, I think was a major intervention which helped in reducing this, as we call the garbage points or the garbage vulnerable points on the street. And this created a system of and that's the reason you required so many vehicles for that. So one issue was house-to-house collection and financing for the vehicles to collect that, and second was the solid waste management treatment. So the treatment proposal again were made in line with the regulations of the Pollution Control Board and the Environmental Protection Act, so that norms are followed. And therefore, you find under the centrally sponsored scheme of Swachh Bharat, investments made to set up the segregation centers, to set up the solid waste managed treatment plants, which were either in the different forms of technology. So what happened in Maharashtra, maybe 7-8 years back, was that approach was taken, which was tailor made to the geographical and climatic conditions and also to the size of the city. And thus, this policy framework was created to guide the technological interventions, so that if a municipality is small in a very high rainfall area, you take a different approach. If you have a bigger city in maybe the dry area, you take a different approach. So the state's policy response for the SWM sector was to help and guide the municipalities by guiding them on the technological possible solutions that were made available. And again, operationalizing issues, because on some part I have dealt from the state headquarters, some experience would be from the city side. But as from the state side, the policy interventions were such to help and aid the municipalities, A, and B, try to avoid the repetition that might be done in all the 400 municipalities. So this was the state's response on making policies so as to aid a better implementation, operationalization of this sector on solid waste management. And third, of course, maybe already, I think I am speaking for almost 25 minutes, so I will try to sum up in next 5 minutes. The next approach for solid waste management through Swachh Bharat, if you try to look that, is to go massively for citizens' engagement. Now, this is the fifth approach that is often followed through public policy, that it is just not everything, every time, it has to be done by the government. There is no contradiction and there is no artificial dichotomy between the government and the people, because it is the government chosen by the people. So there is no, they are not against each other, they are fighting each other. That's like the colonial days in which you found people had to fight against the government, but this is the government of the people, and therefore the representative democracy that we follow, every 5 years the people's representative have to go to people, and therefore they are much more accountable and much more sensitive to the concerns and needs of the people. And therefore what you find is a fifth approach of public policy on the issue of even sanitation as well as solid waste management was huge citizen engagement. There were a lot of, if you remember, I think Mr. Amitabh Bachchan was one of the brand ambassador. There was major outreach exercises done through maybe the audiovisual and other ways. The cities also tried to connect and engage with the citizens by way of their housing societies or the resident welfare associations, the various traders associations, the various schools, the colleges, the students, the teachers, the maybe the hawkers association. So this very interesting approach of public policy was done to create a sense of ownership from the people. And also, as we know, again, is another experiment done in the context of public policy of governance, which was it is often called as the philosophy of the new public management. Of course, it has its many pros and cons. What it actually does is to create a regular feedback mechanism to the students, to the citizens, A. And B was the naming and shaming, it's often called, which essentially were done in various competitions. So those cities who performed better got recognition from the government by ways of awards, and that created a feel-good element within the people. And also those who were left behind, instead of the typical political accountability, even people in the day-to-day talk started asking the citizens, as to the politicians and the bureaucrats there, as to what you are doing, why is our city performing poorly. So this was another approach you see in public policy in the urban context, was the naming and shaming by way of competitions and making the results public in a very public ceremony sort of. So this maybe 5 to 6 approaches to from public policy to the issue of sanitation and solid waste management, you can see. And of course, it's an evolving sector, because urbanization still is relatively new, and the funding which is done is still limited. Sixth element, I think I must say, which is often talked in public policy regarding any sector, and also there obviously, therefore, the sector of urban infrastructure. If you're talking of sanitation, if you're talking of solid waste management, then one of the dimension that you have to consider is how would you allow the private sector to be engaged with that sector. Like if it is airline, you have private airlines flying. Why do you require government to be a part of it? Okay, so once the market gets mature, then the role of the state in the science of public policy, as we were told, the role of the state changes from being direct provider to that of supporter and regulator. So again, the question which comes in, the final question I would like to pose to you really, that how do you think that you require the monopoly of municipality over various civic services? So I'm saying monopoly, not so if you have the solid waste management for that matter, if people can collect garbage from your home, from the upper classes, which are societies which are spending so much on their clubhouses and other amenities, and do this treatment on them, then what do you think we should encourage the private sector or the community sector, so to say? Like in Pune, we have a cooperative society of the Safai Karmacharis who are doing most of the solid waste management work. So it could be the private sector, or for that matter, the community sector, which can be given this role, and the provision of civic services by a city. Is the monopoly of municipality really necessary, or should we progressively open up the sector to various private and community operators, whereby the citizens can get the value for their money? Because all said and done, government is government, and it has its own dynamics which is played. So I think it's almost 8 o'clock now. So we had, I think, maybe a rather longish monologue here. But I hope that in this short 25 or 30 minutes, you could understand the dimensions of public policy. Public policy can be regulatory, public policy response can be institutional, public policy response can be punitive, public policy response can be incentivization, public policy response can be by way of deciding whether private sector is allowed, not allowed, and also the public policy response can also decide whether to what extent can we really create a people's movement. So these were the broad, I think, dimensions of public policy. And also when we apply them to the sector of sanitation and solid waste management, mostly we saw how the institutions and laws and finance development corporations and centrally sponsored schemes and infrastructure funding schemes and the transactions in the intergovernmental transfers make play their various roles when we are considering the issues of public policy in urban context. So I think I will stop here. It has almost been 25-30 minutes. Please, I mean, we are ready to take questions if any. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for providing such a comprehensive and enlightening session. I now welcome the chair for a kind remarks on the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. So the today's session was very interesting, speaking about the intertwining aspects of water and sanitation. Water, we had a good session, and sanitation. Thank you, Samirji, for taking, as usual, interesting ways in which, from the coloniality to the present situations, and how it is important to have the sanitation and solid waste management to a sustainable understanding of a habitat, and especially the urban local governance. And this is some of the issue that is very, very important whenever we are going to the meetings. Sanitation and solid waste management is something that is actually affecting and disturbing the urban local governance, and it is and then you have given, from your experience and expertise, you have given very interesting, thought-provoking understandings to this, and I'm happy for the session, and I would welcome all the students to use these things, because usually, like unlike another people, like who have an practical experience, Samirji has also written very interesting book on this, and he also had an academic in-depth knowledge to see that, okay, not from a practical perspective, but also from a theoretical perspective. So you will have you are having a person who has both a theoretical and academic and a practical experiences to to answer your questions. So please take use of the opportunity and please ask questions. Thank you. Thank you once again, Samirji, and students, please ask questions.
Yes, Lalit Kumarji, you can go ahead.
Hello, sir. After listening, thank you for your enlightening talk. And after understanding that how the sanitation works in context to the, am I audible? Yeah, okay. So
Yes, you are audible. Please go ahead.
in context to the urban policy making, my question is, as you said, sir, each entity has its own role to play. The the private players, the community builders, and the government as a whole. But if there was a support from the government in context to the from the policy perspective, considering that sanitation or waste management in our country is a highly unregulated area. That is the reason there is a monopoly of municipalities in context to waste management. So if there was support to the if technological implementations, or let's say localizing. So my question in the bigger context is, what is the future of urban living? If we were to say in the context of urban planning, as the population explodes, we are looking at twice the population, urban population by 2030. So considering the achievement of our climate pledges made by our Prime Minister and the growth of trajectory of our country, localizing the waste management at the municipal levels is the most practical solution going ahead. But there is a significant crunch in context to the financial resources available for the municipalities. So if we could integrate the support from the various, from your sessions, sir, I understood that we have the support from the government in the form of grants, but we don't have any support coming in from the institution. So how could we incentivize other private players or community associations to go ahead with these kind of programs?
So this is a course of public policy. So I will speak from the dimension of public policy.
Yes,
So
sir.
the issue is here, what can be done to encourage people to do their own solid waste management and
Yes, sir.
processing of the waste. Now,
Yes.
if you talk from the context of public policy, then the latest municipal solid waste management rules. The public
Okay.
policy is also executed by the rules formulated under the Act. So
Okay.
these rules essentially does make a provision, rather
Okay.
a compulsion, that a housing society beyond a particular area or
Yes.
tonnage must make their own arrangements to treat their own solid waste. So if you see, at least in bigger cities like maybe it might be Mumbai, Delhi, or other places, now you slowly find the big this townships, or maybe the gated communities are now being asked to do their own solid waste processing. So essentially, it is we are encouraging people and the housing resident societies or the resident welfare societies, as might be called in bigger cities or maybe around other part of the country, to take on the onus of treating the own waste. Because as we know, we have the basic principle of polluter pays as one of the basic principles in
Yes, sir.
environmental jurisprudence. So what I mean, when as far as public policy is concerned, now the under the solid waste management rules, policy has been made that the people, the bigger housing societies or even the commercial complexes must take on the onus onto themselves to process the solid waste management. How much it is effective is of another part. So, I mean, it might be a good exercise for, you all also, that what could be the pros and cons of introducing a public policy of allowing any private sector or ecosystem to to engage with solid waste management. For example, you get the data connection at your home. You get all the data, Wi-Fi, other things. The municipality doesn't provide it. You get electricity at your home. Municipality doesn't provide it. So it could be an exercise, that should we introduce a policy, and if yes, by which form, where we will allow, encourage, incentivize an ecosystem of solid waste management. They were very rightly pointed out about the climate context and the carbon context, because our in current scenario, the solid waste management framework is extremely climate, and it creating a lot of greenhouse gases. It is actually a very inefficient, climatically, it is very inefficient way we are handling our solid waste management. Because if you're going to create mountains of garbage, you are accelerating the methane creation. And therefore, if you try to consider this, then maybe decentralized solid waste management and even home composting is one of the better ways of doing it. Now, it might be a good way, but how will you use the existing government institutions and the governance tools of act or rule or regulation or punitive action or incentivization or support or ecosystem or climate startup? That again is the bouquet of policy alternatives that you have. So yes, I think the way we are handling our cities for last 50 years, maybe post independence to 2020 now to COVID, we can take this span. The challenges that you would be facing in the next 15 or 20 or 30 years are going to be extremely different. They might be very different, and therefore the approaches that we took to handle our cities for last 50 years would, I am afraid, mostly ineffective. So we require a very sharp and very fast fundamental rethinking to connect with the existing challenges that we have. Otherwise, as we often say, a 19th century legal framework based on 20th century technology cannot solve 21st century problems. It's as simple as that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. True, sir. True. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your answer, sir. Thank you for your answer. My bigger vision I was trying to get to was about the decentralized waste management. But as you rightly pointed out, that there is a bouquet of policy methods available which we can adapt to work towards that. Thank you so much, sir.
So there's a raised hand by Ashish Kelkurji. You can go ahead.
I think you are on mute. Probably, are you on mute? I'm unable to hear you. Yes, we're unable to hear you, Ashish. Please, problem with your mic. We're unable to hear you. Probably you can chat, you can type that. Can you hear you?
Now can you hear me?
Yes, very much. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for the wonderful presentation that you have given. And there were lots of insights that I could gather. One thing I would like to ask is that these policies that are developed by the government, that in a way very short term, in the sense just for the period of 3 years, 4 years, or maximum 5 years till the government is there, and the policy changes after the government changes and things like that. So my question is that for a long-term problem like housing or infrastructure, how can there be a short-term policies in implementation?
Very actually the context of time for public policy, it is changing fundamentally. On the contrary, there is a view which is probably diametrically opposite to what you are saying, which says that the things are changing so fast. You can have a broad goals, long-term goals, yes, that you provide houses affordably, everybody, it's say 20 years. That's the objective that you have. But the scenario is changing so fast, you can't be rigidly fixed to a particular approach which is taken for 5 to 10 years when things are changing. It's like, using a Google map. And, if you're traveling a particular road or traffic jam comes up, and it immediately gives you the alternative approach for you. So probably in the context of time, a very agile, flexible, fastly responding institutions and approaches is on the contrary necessary. You have to differentiate between the policy, goal, objectives, and operational plan. So what I'm trying to tell you is that a goal, of course, will be there. Now, you must have heard about the Sustainable Development Goals. The SDGs are made in maybe 2015, and they are supposed to be achieved in 2030, whatever the goals are, and the targets which are mentioned under that. So that goals and objectives can be maybe long term, especially for a country like India. We are we're a $2,500 per capita economy. And if you compare with other developed countries, say like United States, it's $81,000 per capita economy. So when the objective, of course, will be there, but the approaches will have to be very flexible and agile. That if something doesn't work, we have to be agile enough to understand what are the limitations, create an alternative plan of action, and then execute. So speed is the essence in this era, which probably was not the case 50 years back. So speed will be there, and we'll have to think of various operational plans, and we'll be agile to execute them. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. So actually, my next question would be to ask you is that suppose there is a flexibility in the planning system. It's quite possible that we can have amendments, like we have the 74th amendment that was envisaged in 1992. So instead of having a brand new policy, are there any amendments in the present policies that you have, or there is a continuity in previous policies and new policies?
My dear, it really depends what you understand in your mind by policy. I don't know what is your definition of policy. So I mean that of course is a very fundamental question. Like Ramayana madhe Sita kon hoti. It's like asking that. But so maybe of course no issues about that. But the word policy is often glamorized and often confused and often made very vague, which is not the case. Whatever government does is policy. That's my definition. So if government chooses to do something, you can make it as a part of public policy, which is basically a plan of action. Ultimately, the duration might change, the objectives might change, the approach might change, but essentially public policy is often taken as whatever government does. So if you really enter into the nitty-gritties of what precise definition of policies, I think the questions are arising because of that. But for the purpose of this discussion, we can say that whatever government does, it is a policy A. B, the objectives might change because public policy is determined by the representatives of the people. Very often there is a belief, especially in the elite higher classes, that policy is made by the managers and the bureaucrats and the consultants, which is not correct. It is the prerogative of the representative of the peoples to make policy, and the morality that emerges out of public is public morality. I mean, whether it is good, bad, ugly, not bad, political, polarized, not political preferences, immaterial here. As far as science of public policy is concerned, the one approach says that if the people want X, then yes, that is the morality, that is the public morality for the public policy to follow. On the duration, it will be flexible. The goals and objectives will be probably clear, approaches would be changing, and therefore the question that you asked, that whether policy changes, well, it is like you have started by flight from Mumbai to Delhi. Obviously it is on autopilot, but there will be minor changes. When the air pocket comes, he will move aside, go up, descend. That's going to happen. That is in fact that flexibility need to be allowed, to the to any cause effect relation, logical chain of events that we are considering. Yeah.
So basically, you're trying to say is that objectives are same, only policy names and their details change a little bit according to the governments or people's.
I will again come to the same question. You please redefine what you mean by policy.
No, policy,
I think the questions are arising because of the confusion of the definition about policy. That's my feedback to you. That's my feedback to you. That you please go on Wikipedia or Google or Perplexity or Gemini or whatever.
No, I understand.
Just check what public policy is. Just check what public policy is. The questions are arising because of the non-clarity on the definition of policy. That's the feedback I'm giving you. So as I say, public policy is what a government does. Duration can vary. The objectives can also vary. One government can say, yes, this is the policy. Second government can say, no, it's not a policy. You can't debate that in a democracy. And the cause and effect, the logical chain of causation that we consider to reach a particular objective will, of course, will have to be modified suitably. And that precisely is the essence of this era in which things are moving very fast. So you require a very agile government, which is very fast on responding and acknowledging. That's a moot point. Actually. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. There are questions in the Q&A box, if you would like to answer them. The first question is by Sonam Maske. The question reads as, in informal settlements, the door-to-door waste collection is impactful. It does have challenges and politics in it. So while making policy related to informal settlements, which are the major challenges and highlights one should keep in mind to make it sustainable? If you can kindly answer the question, sir.
A very practical question. I think someone who must have worked in this area can only ask such a question. So that's a good question. Again, let us understand what is public policy. Policy in that case by cities, when a city passes a resolution by the general body stating that there will be host-to-host collection as per a mission, it is a public policy. It's nothing different than that. So the resolution of your municipal corporation to collect the door-to-door collection from every place, including slums, is a public policy. And then what are the challenges of operationalizing it? So challenges of public policy are to be different than the challenges of operationalizing the public policy. One need to be very clear about it. There's a lot of confusion about this word public policy somehow. So one, of course, is that the manpower requirement, and the logistics required for that. So it might be easier in that sense that you put, maybe you have a good gated community, there is one tower of maybe 200 flats or 100 flats, is easy because it is the responsibility of the housing society to put the garbage at the doorstep, and it's easier for the municipal corporation to collect it. But such an arrangement cannot be made for the slums, for the slum dwellers. Therefore, the operational part, I'm not again saying about the public policy, I'm talking about the practical challenges of executing that public policy. Would be larger number of manpower deployment which has to be done, because there are a lot of collections to be done. That's number one. And number two, of course, is a behavioral element, because very often the houses are small, and therefore, in some cases, in which I have seen in some places here, is that the asking people to create maybe a waste basket there and wait till the municipal people come to collect it often creates a implementation issue, And very often it has been seen that, sometimes the throwing of the litter and garbage into the outstanding area does happen. But of course, it is, as we say, citizen engagement is the most important element. And once we convince people, and then people start seeing the difference by their own eyes in short duration, we see a greater response from the citizens. So therefore, challenge, of course, if at all it's a challenge, it is convincing the people to change their behavior. So behavioral changes for citizens in especially solid waste management has been seen to be a major at least in the initial phases. Once the system stabilizes, then it becomes easy. And two, as I said, a greater manpower and investment to machinery for collecting, because the collecting points increase in slums as compared to that of housing societies. Thank you. Which is the other one?
Yes, sir. The other question is that in the era of mass movement into metropolitan cities, how the shortcoming of infrastructure can be optimized, and also in the small cities, how the upcoming load on the infrastructure can be planned so that the problems like waste management and water scarcity can be handled as per your experience.
This is, regarding the larger infrastructure challenges. And again, as we are here in a public policy class, one of course would be what are the public policies taken by the union government, by the state government, by the city governments to upgrade the infrastructure, and what has the public investment made into it. So this will be two dimensions in which we can talk of public policy and urban issues. So as I said, from maybe in 2005, we had the JNRM, which was the urban infrastructure funding mechanism. So from the central government, from the state government, from the city government, you had a policy of having a basic level of services. And then we made an infrastructural investment through the various centrally sponsored schemes to ensure that the level goes very high. Again, there's a second, last maybe a couple of months, you might be seeing that there's a lot of focus in made on increasing the investment available to the government, to the urban infrastructure, because earlier we had to depend only upon the grants. So grant financing was a major vehicle for investing to urban infrastructure, which again, which probably has not proved to be sufficient now. Therefore, taking cue from other countries for that matter, the debt financing for urban infrastructure is something which is being tried. So you might be seeing that in certain cities have gone for municipal bond, in which the bond you get the loan at a relatively less interest rate, because it's a bond if you are financially strong, and then this investment is used to upgrade the infrastructure rapidly. So if you compare some cities around world, one of the major difference you find for the upgradation of urban infrastructure is the allowing the municipalities to go to debt market or bond market to raise it, because the grant financing and tax financing is not going to be sufficient. So this is a policy shift that has happened in last maybe more strongly probably to say in the last couple of months, in which we are asking people to move out and take the help of the latest funding mechanism. There's one way of doing it. And second, of course, is incentivizing or prioritizing a particular act. So most of the government missions are talking of, I can list out the various missions, but with maybe water, mobility, housing, solid waste management, all the elements which make city living, you find major investment being made, either grant or tax, by various centrally sponsored missions. So that probably could be one thing. And second, again, is the issue of small cities and big cities, because one has to understand that we are discussing for almost last 50 years now. Let's make the cities, small cities, good, so that people won't come here in big cities. But that's not going to happen, because the opportunities that people will find in bigger cities will always be very high, and especially in the Indian context, in which even if you make which is a decently good medium term, we find people coming to the younger generation shifting to bigger cities, obviously because of the opportunities that they get there. Therefore, the bigger cities will be there. Smaller cities, of course, will have to be investment, but the purpose is not to stop people from coming to big cities. It's a race we have to, and probably our generation and maybe the next generation will have to put in lots of effort to, put on, create the new infrastructure that we are talking of. So there is no easy progress. You are not going to get progress just sitting in your car. You will have to work for it. You will have to take the pains for it. It is only the work of 1 or 2 generations that you see the developed countries have become developed. So probably it's our time to work on to developing the infrastructure by either financing and of course by prioritizing it as an important goal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah,
I can see no more questions. So I think we can move on.
yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you once again, sir. It was a pleasure listening to you. We hope to collaborate with you in future IMPRI events as well. With this, we come to the end of today's session. As we come to the end of day 4 of UPLGYF, Urban Policy and Local Governance Youth Fellowship, an online national autumn and winter school program, a 4-month online immersive introductory leadership certificate training fellowship program, I, Samprikta Banerjee, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI, New Delhi. We are grateful to our experts for the day 4 session, Professor N C Narayanan ji and Mr. Sameer Unhale ji, for taking out their valuable time and allowing us to learn from this online certificate program. We thank all of our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation. We look forward to welcoming you on October 31st at 6 p.m. for day 5 of the certification course by distinguished expert Professor Amita Bhide, followed by fellows interaction and discussion session. We are grateful if you're watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join in future to our IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning. Wishing you a good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.